Hi everybody, it is September 2nd, 2019, and it is day 2 of Chiari Malformation Awareness Month. Now today I will be going in depth and detailed about Chiari Malformation and what it is. Now, Chiari Malformation is a condition where your cerebellum tonsil and sometimes your brainstem are being pushed out of your skull and into your spinal cord and brainstem. There are 4 types of Chiari Malformation, types 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 and 4 being the worst, type 1 being the most common. Today I'll be talking about types 1 and 2, as types 3 and 4 are very hard to find information on because they are the most rare. Now, Chiari Malformation type 1 is the most common. It's a structural abnormality of the cerebellum, the part of the brain that controls your balance, which is why generally when you get super, super dizzy when you have Chiari, that's why. It's basically a structural abnormality where that part of your brain and the skull are not quite right and not how they're supposed to be. The malformation occurs when the lower part of the cerebellum is pushed below the foramen magnum, which is the large hole in the base of your skull, which allows the passage of your spinal cord to go through. And type 1 is not involving the brainstem. It's when the brainstem is not being pushed through the foramen magnum. Now, only the spinal cord is supposed to pass through the foramen magnum. So the fact that your brain is being pushed through is an issue because that's a part that's not supposed to go through that hole. Now, Chiari Malformation is type 1 is the most common type, and it's said that it often may not cause symptoms, but in all reality, a lot of the cases I've seen, type 1 can cause some of the worst symptoms. And on other hands, it can go completely unnoticed for years. Now, Chiari Malformation is usually first noticed, the type 1 is usually first noticed as an adolescent or as an adult. Oftentimes, it is found in preteens to teens, but if it goes far enough and the diagnosis isn't made, it can wait as long as into adulthood. Now, type 2 is where 2 types of the brain are being pushed through the foramen magnum. That is generally the cerebellum and the brainstem. So this problem happens mostly in newborns who have spina bifida or spinal melaningo. I'm going to completely butcher that word, so we're going to go through that. Basically, it's when a part of the spinal cord and meninges grow outside the body instead of inside. And that is the most often time when Chiari Malformation type 2 happens. Now, a common problem with type 2 malformations is that too much spinal fluid will flow into the brain, and that puts more pressure on the brain. Now, like I said, type 2 is not as common. It's actually much less common, but it's often found in newborns, and it's found very quickly because of the fact that they will have the spina bifida or the spine growing outside of the body, and so that will allow doctors to find that easier. People with type 1, it's much harder to find, and it's something that definitely isn't noticeable to the eye, to anyone, because of the fact that you can't see it. There's no abnormality on the outside. It's all inside. So you can't see the fact that the cerebellum tonsil is being pushed through the foramen magnum. All you can see is that, a regular person who seems healthy. So that is type 1 and type 2 Chiari malformation and the differences. When you get into type 3, it starts to get a little more, it's one of the most severe types, and it's when a portion of the lower back part of the brain and the brainstem are pushed through, and it's more than just the cerebellum tonsil, and that's actually diagnosed during birth or even during the ultrasound at pregnancy, and type 4 is a whole nother mess. So like I said, those ones, because there's so little research, it's so hard to find information about those. But the main focus, the main one that people know barely anything about that a ton of people have, is type 1. And I'm not saying that type 1 is more important than the other 3, because obviously the other 3 have more severe symptoms and more severe problems. But type 1 is the most common, and nobody knows about it. Like 1 in every 200 people could have Chiari malformation type 1, and nobody knows about it. So, like I said in my video yesterday, please share this information. Help me get the word out. That is all I am asking. You don't have to subscribe, you don't have to like, you don't do anything. Just share this and help me get out the awareness about Chiari malformation. My name is Caitlin, and I will see you guys tomorrow.